Right now at the state capitol, there's a bill to improve better access to mental health care that could impact thousands who wind up in jail or prison in Connecticut. Specifically, it would require that people who are incarcerated be provided evidence-based mental health interventions upon their initial assessment and intake. A mother from Guilford has been advocating for this bill after recognizing there was inadequate mental health support within the prison system. Back in 2020, her son, Ellis was just a high school student when he was arrested for attempted murder. After approaching a woman he did not know in Westport, stabbing her in the leg, causing serious injuries. He was in the throes of what was called a psychotic episode, and his case was stalled on many occasions after he was deemed incompetent to stand trial. But in 2022, a judge did find him competent, and next month, after entering a guilty plea, he will be sentenced to 10 years in prison. Now, over the past 5 years, while her son remained behind bars, unsentenced, Ellis's mother never denied that her son is responsible for that horrific attack. Instead, she's gained a much better understanding about mental illness and the need to provide broader training to law enforcement and a higher level of care for those who wind up incarcerated. Joining me now, Denise Paley and State Senator Cohen. Ladies, thank you so much for being with us here today to talk about this important issue. So, Denise, we'll begin with you. We know what happened to your son. What led you from that experience to talk to lawmakers?
So as I've been on this journey, and my family's been on this journey, we've been learning not what's wrong, that's not the right word, but pieces of the system and the pieces of our legal system that could run better to help others. So, as we move along this with Ellis, we kind of see in the wake of what's behind him, what could have been done differently that perhaps in the future can avoid other people from having to suffer similar circumstances to what he has since he's been arrested and incarcerated.
And Senator Cohen, we know that this got out of committee, but passing a law in Connecticut can be a lengthy process and a complicated one. You have some support, but you want others to jump on board. Tell me where it stands right now and what needs to be done.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Dennis. And Denise has been such a champion of mental health legislation, and this journey actually started with her several years ago, and we've already made so much progress in terms of crisis intervention training for law enforcement across the state. We have passed legislation that has done exactly what Denise mentioned, will help others from having to experience the heartache and trauma that Denise and her family have experienced and other families have experienced. So what we have this year is we've introduced a piece of legislation that pertains to mental health in the Department of Corrections. So in our prison system, we've heard from mental health providers in the prison system that there just simply aren't enough of them to support the services that inmates need. And we also know that inmates deserve the care. They deserve mental health care just as they deserve physical health care. And we want to make sure that they're getting the care that they need to reduce recidivism, to make sure that they are making progress in their mental health pursuits. So all of that's really important. And so the bill just got out of judiciary, and we hope that it will cross the finish line, but it still has some ways to go.
Have you had any conversations with Governor Lamont as to whether he'll sign it into law?
I haven't had conversations with Governor Lamont, but he has been incredibly supportive of mental health issues in the past, and I'm hopeful that this will be the same.
Denise, the law passed last year regarding police. Why was that so important to you?
Ellis committed a violent act. He stabbed a woman in the leg. He holds himself completely accountable for that. I can never say that that would not have happened, but I do in my heart believe that perhaps circumstances would have unfolded differently if the police that we had encountered had this critical training. Crisis intervention training is not just to address somebody in the throes of psychosis, it's also to help recognize when it's happening. And that was really the miss with our son, where we were so sure he was not in his right state of mind. And the police officers that we encountered thought he was just being a typical high school kid, that there was nothing wrong. I don't want to see another family endure the heartache that he or his family or the people who love him, have endured. That should never have to happen again. And we've kind of been on this journey as we learn things, as you know things, We can either know them and be silent, or we can know them and fight for change and try and do something about them.
You know, we have stories on the news frequently where mental illness is attributed to a crime. When you hear these things on the news, what goes through your mind, Senator?
Well, we know a high percentage of incidents with law enforcement pertain to mental health issues. And so we want to make sure that law enforcement is trained on crisis intervention. And what we saw early on is that there was sort of a lack of availability of training. And so we really wanted to make sure that through police officer standards and training, that those courses were offered for law enforcement across the state. And since we've passed that legislation, we know that so many officers have been trained in the state of Connecticut in crisis intervention. That just makes for a healthier place. It reduces the incidence of crime and certainly allows law enforcement to really understand what's going on and de-escalate a situation.
Have you had any conversations with police chiefs about this, like, you know, in terms of their view on it?
Absolutely. They want their forces to be trained in crisis intervention. In fact, there's a trend now with many forces across the state to bring on police social workers and to have separate units dedicated to mental health.
I'll give you the final word because I know a lot of us are wondering, how's your son doing?
Today, he's doing as well as he possibly could in the circumstances that he's living in. So, you know, my son did finally get treatment while living in incarceration, and his mental health is very good, and we're all grateful for it. But in seeing how long it took for him to get it, this is why we want this timely mental health bill. No one should have to go that long to get the treatment that they deserve. Everybody deserves to have good mental health care. Everybody, whether you're in prison or not.
Denise Paley, I appreciate you sharing your story and your pain with us. Not easy, I know. And Senator Christine Cohen, best of luck to the both of you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.